She says few words and carries a big gun that shoots portals. Today we're talking about Chell from Portal and Portal 2.
It's hard to overstate my satisfaction.
Chell is the silent heroine of Valve's widely popular Portal series, probably one of the most interesting protagonists in recent gaming. You don't find out too much about Chell's personality or her backstory unless you truly pay attention to the games, though reading the comic titled Portal 2 Lab Rats can give you a decent look into her backstory, especially with scientist Doug Ratman, who you find out about a lot in the first game. But let's start from the beginning. We first meet Chell when she wakes up in a relaxation chamber after being apparently knocked unconscious and placed there. She's greeted by GLaDOS, who seems like your standard AI for a little bit, but as she guides Chell through the series and through puzzles and tests, we start to see GLaDOS' true colors. She's absolutely insane, or, well, malfunctioning. There are several terms for crazy. Chell is tasked with completing tests within the abandoned Aperture Science facility, but as you move through each obstacle, you begin to find out a little bit more and hints that describe not only how Aperture fell to GLaDOS, but who Chell was and what she was before. Though you don't really get too much from that until Portal 2 in the comic. You run across messages from Doug Ratman, the former Aperture employee, warning Chell about GLaDOS and guiding her through the test facilities. This is where the popular cake is a lie joke came from. Doug, like Chell, is promised cake for finishing these tests, but claims to be but ends up being a lie. This in itself is a reference to something Chell wrote before, actually, but one step at a time. When Chell finally comes face to face with GLaDOS and defeats her, she's actually dragged right back into Aperture's facilities by a party escort robot, and that really doesn't sound like much of a party to me, but whatever. Anyway, GLaDOS doesn't end up dying and ends up sending a passive-aggressive letter to Chell, but not before blowing out the candle on that cake, which was actually not a lie. Ha! Cue Lab Rat. Without going into too much detail, the comic focuses on Doug Ratman, and he's the guy who left Chell those messages, despite seemingly losing touch with his mind, and guided her through a good chunk of Portal. Doug is actually the last employee remaining alive and free after the big Aperture massacre, which apparently took place on Take Your Daughter to Work Day. Awesome! He's revealed to be the guy who gave Chell her first spot as test subject number 1, referencing her apparent tenacity and stubbornness as his reasoning. Doug actually manages to get out, but ends up feeling bad for Chell, so he goes back in, and at the cost of his own life, he helps the test subject that he forced into the situation. This is where we find out the most about Chell, though it's still not too much. According to the file that Doug has, psychological testing showed that Chell scored well into the 99th percentile on the trait of tenacity. The test notes call her like abnormally stubborn and saying, oh, she never gives up. And it's this stubbornness that makes Ratman choose her as the savior of sorts in hopes that she'll defeat GLaDOS. In Portal 2, Chell is awoken by Wheatley, and this is anywhere between 5 to hundreds of years after the events of Portal. We're never really told. This is where we really get to know Chell, though. While she and Wheatley figure out their way through the now forest-ridden Aperture Science facilities, the player runs across different clues to her past. This includes a science project that is signed by her. There's a theory out there that says Chell was the daughter of a scientist at Aperture, and I'd like to think that it was actually Ratman, but that's never really clarified. At any rate, you move through Portal 2 in a similar way to its predecessor, battling GLaDOS twice before finally defeating her. The end is a little weird. After you beat GLaDOS, she kind of just like lets you go, and a lot of people like to justify this action as Chell's death because in Greek mythology, heaven is actually a cornfield, and that's where Chell seems to be released as the Tourette's sing to her in Italian, which is weird. Anyway, Chell, I think she's really, despite the fact that we're not given a lot of her personality, I think that she's a really great video game character because she's strong, and she honestly just takes no bullshit from anyone. The reason that a lot of the creators have said that she's silent is because it's kind of a way to get back at GLaDOS for taunting her all the way through the game. And despite not seeming very smart because Wheatley tells her to speak and she jumps instead in Portal 2, she's actually very, very smart. I mean, you are the player controlling her, but she has to be smart to figure out these puzzles. So, she's not that dumb. And I think it's really cool that Chell is also a person of color because you don't really see too many like Latina female characters in video games. So I'm really, really glad that we see Chell as like a strong, brilliant woman who's fighting her way out of a situation that she does not want to accept. So yeah, that's why I think Chell is awesome, and I think you guys should definitely play Portal because you will figure out puzzles and not know how you did it, but still feel really smart because you did it. So for Girls in Gaming, this is Catrina Dennis signing off. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.